Before the gods, before the stars, before even time had dared to walk, there was a gap. A void so complete it had no color, no edge, no meaning. Ginnungagap. On one side, Niflheim breathed its icy fog. On the other, Muspelheim burned without form. And between them, the frost met the flame. And from their collision, something stirred. It did not crawl. It did not slither. It swelled a formless bulk of meat and hunger, of ancient will and primal scream. Its name was Ymir, the first of the Jotnar, the frost giants, and from his paws the nightmare of the north began to take shape. He was not evil. He was not kind. He was a creature so vast that his breath became wind, his sweat became rivers, and from the fungus between his toes came the first monsters. From his body, the first giants emerged, creatures without gods, without laws, without love. Beings born not from intention, but accident. They carried cold in their veins and silence in their bones. Some were vast mountains that moved. Some were the shriek of storm given form. But all were wild, unforgiving, endless. The gods did not yet exist, but something ancient watched. Then came Odin. With Vili and Ve, his brothers, he looked upon the giant and saw not creation, but corruption. And so they slew Ymir. His blood drowned entire tribes of Jotnar, sweeping them into oblivion. His skull became the sky. His bones became mountains. From his flesh, they shaped Midgard. And from the ashes of that murder, a hatred was born that would burn until the world itself burned with it. For the giants did not die. They retreated. To Jotunheimr, they fled a realm beyond the reach of gods, across mountains, through storms, behind illusions. There they bred. They waited. And the worst of them whispered not of war, but of return. There was Surt, the fire giant of Muspelheim, keeper of flame, so old it remembered the birth of stars. He waited not in rage, but in certainty. His blade, a sword of world-ending heat, remained buried until the last day. When he rises, the sky will split and the gods will burn. There was Angerboda, the mother of monsters, the great witch of the ironwood. She took Loki into her arms, and from their union came children. The world could not hold a serpent that circles the world, a wolf with jaws that catch the moon, and a daughter who makes death a kingdom. From her womb came prophecy. From her grief came apocalypse. Jörmungandr, her second-born, slithered through the oceans of Midgard until its coils wrapped the world. Its breath turned tides. Its venom poisoned rain. It grew so vast that no ship could cross the sea without sailing over part of its back. When it moved, islands cracked. When it hissed, men dreamed of drowning. Fenrir, her son, howled louder than thunder. He grew too fast, too hungry, his gaze piercing even the heart of Odin. The gods tried to bind him. They lied to him. They tricked him with a ribbon forged by dwarves from the sound of a cat's footfall and the roots of mountains. But he knew. And as they laughed and cheered, Fenrir bit off the hand of Tyr, only one among them who had shown him honor. Now he weights his chains, thinner than thread, but stronger than fear. When he breaks free, he will swallow the sun, and Hel, the daughter, neither beast nor goddess, was cast down. Half her face was beauty, half was rot. Odin sent her to rule over the dead, but she did not mourn. She built a realm of cold and shadow, where the souls not taken by Valkyries drifted like forgotten words. She is no villain, but she is the ending of warmth, and in her halls even the bravest shiver. Yet these were not the only horrors. In the deep roots of Yggdrasil, Nidhogg gnawed. A dragon not born, but spawned from decay itself. He chewed the roots of the world tree with teeth of rust and breath of ruin. He whispered to corpses and drank rot like wine. And when the tree falls, it will be because of him. In the skies above, eagles of monstrous size flew without name, carrying winds that break cities. And between them, Ratatoska the squirrel, with venom in his tongue, scurried up and down the tree, sowing hatred between root and branch, mocking gods and dragons alike. Even in the farthest corners of the 9 realms, nightmares bloomed. Giants made of stone, too slow to speak, but too strong to kill. Ice maidens who froze time with their kiss. Wolves with 1,000 eyes. crows that remembered every war ever fought. These creatures did not beg for mercy. They offered it and then laughed when you took it. But not all giants were enemies. Some spoke with wisdom deeper than the well of Ymir. Some shaped runes before Odin ever dreamed of sacrifice. Some loved the gods. Some birthed them. The line between beast and blood was never clean. Loki himself, a child of giants, dined with the gods, sired their doom, and made them laugh. Skadi, daughter of Thiazi, married Njord and walked both frost and sea. The giant Hrungnir duelled Thor with a heart made of stone and died with pride in his roar. For even monsters in Norse myth are not simply evil. They are necessary. They are the counterweight to creation, the echo of truth, the shadow of the flame. And as the sky begins to darken and the gods grow weary and the great wolf shifts in his sleep, we begin to understand the monsters were never waiting to destroy the world. They were waiting for the world to destroy itself. Then they will rise. In the 9 realms, fear does not always wear a crown. It wears teeth and scales and a quiet patience born from knowing that destiny leans toward chaos. And among all the monsters that crawled out of ancient voids, or were birthed by the cunning of gods, 3 stood taller than myth. Not because of their size, though they were vast, but because they knew their purpose. They did not fight for conquest. They fought because their existence was prophecy. The first was Fenrir, the wolf whose breath turned summer to frost. Born of Loki and Angerboda, he was no ordinary beast. He grew faster than reason. His howls cracked stone. And in his golden eyes, Odin saw a reflection of his own death. The gods tried to love him once. Tyr, the god of justice, fed him by hand. Fenrir trusted only him. But trust is fragile when surrounded by fear. And fear is what Odin felt, what Frigg whispered, what Heimdall dreamt. So they plotted to bind him. The first chain snapped like twine. The second shattered like snow. Then came Gleipnir, the unbreakable ribbon crafted by dwarves. From 6 impossible things: the sound of a cat's footfall, a woman's beard, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spit of a bird. No one questioned how these were gathered. They only asked, would it hold? The gods approached Fenrir with smiles, lies painted in golden light. They told him it was a game, but Fenrir, sharp of tooth and soul, did not trust them. He agreed only if one god would place their hand in his jaws as a sign of truth. Only Tyr stepped forward. The gods bound him. The wolf strained, and when he could not break free, he knew the truth. Tyr's hand was gone. The gods cheered, but Fenrir did not forget. He lay there, mouth sealed by sword, howling in silence. But he dreamed, and in every dream the sun burned in his throat. The second beast was Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent. Also a child of Loki and Angerboda. His birth was not marked by cries, but by tsunamis. He was cast into the sea by Odin, thrown into the depths like a sin too shameful to bear. But the sea did not destroy him. It fed him. He grew and grew until he wrapped around Midgard itself, tail in mouth, forming a ring of poison and prophecy. When he stirred, tides shifted. When he blinked, storms gathered. He became the boundary. Nothing crossed the oceans without crossing his gaze. He was not evil. He was balance. He knew that when he let go of his tail, the world would change forever. His greatest enemy was Thor, the god of thunder, and the serpent of the sea, Fate, twisted their threads into knots. In one tale, Thor went fishing with the giant Ymir and cast a line with an ox's head as bait. The hook sank deep, and what it caught shook the sky. Thor pulled, and the sea churned. Jormungandr rose, hissing eyes glowing like drowned stars. Thor lifted his hammer. Ymir, afraid, cut the line. But the story was not over. It was never over. The serpent would rise again. The third was Hel, their sister. She was not claws or venom. She was inevitability. Cast into Niflheim by Odin, she ruled over the dead not taken by Valkyries. Her realm was called Helheim, a place of shadows, quiet and stillness. Half her face was beautiful, the other half decayed. She welcomed souls with neither joy nor scorn. She simply received them. But Hel did not sleep in her throne. She watched. She waited. She built walls higher than any fortress, not to keep invaders out, but to hold something in. Her silence was a shield. her stillness a scream not yet sounded, and when the time comes, she will open her gates, not with rage, with release. For death cannot be locked forever. These were the children of Angerboda, born not for mischief, not for madness, but to unmake what the gods had made. But they were not alone. In the dark corners of Norse myth, other monsters stirred. There was Hresvelgr, the giant in eagle form, who sat at the end of the world, beating his wings to summon winter. His feathers were storms. His eyes were empty skies. There was Garm, the hound of hell, who guarded the gates of death. Blood foamed from his jaws. He would break loose when the chain of fate unraveled. There were the Jotnar giants of fire and ice, each older than any god. Their bodies shaped mountains. Their breath froze fjords. Their voices cracked the sky. Some sought peace. Others waited for vengeance. And in the roots of Yggdrasil still gnawed Nidhogg, the dragon of rot. He feasted on corpses, whispering despair. Ratatoskr the squirrel carried his insults upward, sowing distrust between the branches and the heavens. These creatures were not merely obstacles. They were warnings. Each embodied something the gods feared but could not destroy. Time, death decay, betrayal, nature untamed. The gods built walls. They forged weapons. They named heroes. But the monsters were not impressed. Because monsters in Norse myth were never just villains. They were truths that could not be silenced. And every truth, when buried long enough, erupts. It began with silence, not peace. The kind of silence that lives in the pause between the crack of ice and its shatter. A silence full of held breath. Yggdrasil trembled. The ravens of Odin returned, but with no words. The Norns, weavers of fate, cut threads with hands that bled. And deep in the ironwood, Fenrir opened one eye. The sky fractured. The first scream came not from a god, but from the roots of the world. Nidhogg, the corpse dragon who had feasted on death for eons, let loose a howl that twisted the wind. He burst from the underworld like plague riding lightning wings wide enough to cover the horizon. He flew with rot, trailing behind him the echo of every forgotten soul dripping from his scales. His hunger was not for flesh. It was for collapse. And above him, the world tree groaned, its bones splintering under centuries of slow death. Then the wolves came. Skull and Hati, monstrous hounds born to chase the sun and moon, now closed the hunt. For ages they had pursued celestial prey, circling the heavens with jaws of fire and shadow. But this day, the chase ended. Skull bit into the sun. Hati swallowed the moon. The sky dimmed. Stars wept and vanished. The world turned cold and mad. Across the 9 realms the dead stirred. Hell opened her gates, and out came not armies, but truths. Souls with unfinished songs. Warriors too angry to rest. Monsters never mourned. Leading them was Garm, the hound of death eyes, red as ember's fangs soaked in eons of still blood. He did not bark. He howled, and every living thing flinched. At the borders of Midgard oceans frothed and pulled back. Then rose Jörmungandr. The serpent's coils no longer circled the world, they shattered it. Mountains fell into the sea. Ships crumbled like bark. Thunder cracked, and from the heavens descended Thor's storm in hand rage in blood. God and beast met with a scream. Hammer met fang. Lightning clashed with poison. Their battle reshaped the sea, drew the gaze of every realm. But both knew this was their end. Thor crushed the serpent's skull. But Jörmungandr's venom filled the air. Thor took 9 steps before falling. Elsewhere, Surt, the fire giant of Muspelheim, crossed the Bifrost. His sword, brighter than the sun, cut through gods and stone. Heimdall blew the Gjallarhorn its call, shaking the dead from slumber. Then even he fell locked in final embrace with Loki, whose laughter echoed as both tumbled into flame. And amid it all, rose Fenrir. Gleipnir snapped. The impossible ribbon spun from the world's contradictions could no longer hold his fury. He rose a tower of muscle and hatred. His jaws opened and he swallowed Odin whole. Not as revenge, as destiny. For Odin had known every vision, every rune, every whisper. He had seen this end, and yet he walked to it. Tyr fought beside him and died in silence. Valhalla emptied, Folkvanger burned, and the gods wept. But the monsters did not cheer, because this was never their victory. This was their release. For too long they had been buried beneath stories told by those who feared them, painted as demons, spoken of only in caution. But here in the firelight of finality, they stood as they were not evil, not innocent, just necessary. The monsters were not villains, they were endings. And in Ragnarok, endings walk like kings. Still not all was lost. Even as the world cracked open, even as the tree fell, even as Freya watched Folkvangr turn to ash, and Sif gathered the last of the children and Idun's apples turned black, a seed remained, a breath, a whisper between ruin and rebirth. But before that could matter, before new dawns or green shoots, there was one more fire to burn. There was no victory in the end, only stillness. The world had screamed, the sky had cracked, the fire had come and it had taken everything. Yggdrasil, the world tree, once the spine of the 9 realms, now lay broken. Its roots smouldered, its branches once infinite now bent and snapped like the limbs of a dying god. And at its base, Nidhogg writhed triumphant. He did not roar, he fed. Not on corpses anymore, but on what remained hope-memory divinity. His wings no longer beat wind, they stirred the dust of forgotten realms. No god stood to stop him. Odin swallowed by Fenrir now lived only in echoes. Thor slain by Jörmungandr lay crushed beneath a sky that no longer held stars. Freya, her tears golden and dry, had vanished with the last of Folkvangr's light. But death is never total in Norse myth. It is transformation. Beneath the charred ruins in a forest made of silence, 2 shapes stirred. Leaf and Lifthrasir, humans not gods, not warriors, just survivors. They had hidden in Hodmimis, Holta's sacred grove that even fire could not touch, nourished by dew and shielded by the last breath of Yggdrasil. They did not know of Fenrir or Odin. They did not remember Ragnarok. But in their bones was a tremble, a resonance of endings and beginnings. And when they stepped into the ash-covered world barefoot and unsure, the monsters were gone. Not slain, not banished, fulfilled. Because what is a monster, if not the final question of creation? Fenrir, whose rage cracked heaven, was never meant to live forever. He was born to devour, to balance the arrogance of gods. He had swallowed the Allfather, not out of spite, but because even wisdom must one day yield. Jörmungandr, the serpent who encircled Midgard, was not simply a beast. He was the horizon, the border between chaos and comfort. When he uncoiled, he unmade illusion. And in his death, the sea quieted. Hell's silent queen of the dead did not weep. She did not rage. She opened her doors and let the world pass through. And when it was done, she turned away, not cruel, not warm, simply done. Even Nidhogg, that crawler of decay, found purpose, for without rot the new cannot rise. His hunger was necessary, his feast divine. They were not evil, they were the balance that gods feared to name. But monsters do not disappear, they change shape. The fire that once sat in Surt's sword now warms the hearts of the first children of the new world. The poison of Jörmungandr becomes the caution passed in stories. The howl of Fenrir becomes the echo in a child's scream. The breath of hell becomes the hush before sleep. And in the grove where the new world begins, trees sprout, one twisted, one straight. One remembers what came before. One reaches for what is to come. Above them the sky opens, not bright yet, but ready. And far off, deeper than the roots of any tree, deeper than even the well of Urd, a faint scratching continues. Ratatolska still climbs, still whispers, still stirs. Because even in rebirth, myth does not die. It curls itself into stories, into warning, into wonder. And though the gods may change names, though monsters may wear new skins, their dance continues. Because to be divine is to build, and to be monstrous is to remind of endings, of limits, of the price of power. And as the first sun of the new world crests the horizon, lighting ash-covered earth with golden flame, a whisper curls on the wind. They were not beasts. They were the truth the gods could not face. And now, the world is ready to begin again.